What's going on, everybody? Happy Saturday. This is Fair Play coming at you once again with another review for this past week's episode of The Passage. Yes, this is episode 4 from season 1, and it's entitled, Whose Blood Is This? Now, before I get started, of course, you know, it's hard for me to wind these reviews down to 15 or 20 minutes, even though Spreaker only allows me to do 15 minutes at a time. So again, this will probably be a 2-part review, so y'all please excuse me, and I apologize for that, but you know, you have to do what you have to do sometimes to get by. So anyway, here we go. We know last episode 3 was all about primarily the inmate or the test subject, Shauna Babcock. We saw in episode 3 what it was that led up to her actually going to prison and being put on death row. All right. Because she killed her mother and her stepfather. All right. Well, this particular episode was primarily about the test subject, Anthony Carter, the young black guy that was on death row, and we find out why he was on death row as well. This episode was kind of deep. It was a little heavy. It was a little top heavy, but it was good. It was good. Now, there is some writing things in there that kind of, you know, makes you say, okay, why did they do that? Why did the writers do this? But overall, it was a pretty good watch, okay? A lot of things going on at Project Noah. And this, of course, I'm talking to the people that are watching these podcasts or listening to these podcasts are pretty familiar with what's been going on this season. So let me go ahead. Now, little Amy is, they show her first, of course. She knows that Anthony is in the room next to her. And she knows that he's been having nightmares. And she's worried about this thing happening to her. So she asked Brad if she's going to go through the same things as Anthony. Of course, Brad being Brad, trying not to make her feel bad and trying to help her get, you know, feel a little bit better about what happened to her. He assures her that it won't happen because they're going to get out of there. I don't know how he thinks that's going to stop anything, but he's got her believing that, okay, we're going to be leaving soon, so don't worry about it. Also, they show in this episode that Amy is still constantly writing little notes to Anthony and sliding them up under the door with a crayon, and she's trying to check on him and make sure that he's all right. And he is communicating with her in kind. He's checking on her as well. So there's a really sweet exchange between her and Anthony as well. You see that Dr. Lear, him and the Oriental guy are actually down in the lab at one point, and Dr. Lear is looking at the monitors and he's studying the brain activity of all of the test subjects. And he's basically trying to understand how they think in case they need to defend themselves at Project Noah. He realizes that they communicate with the employees through their nightmares, because he notices that the brain activity increases late in the night when people are having nightmares, usually when they're asleep, of course. So he notices that Dr. Fanning's activity is exponentially higher than everyone else's. We also know that Dr. Fanning is the leader of all of them. He's going to be the leader of all of these vampires. You see that from day one, all right? So then they show that how Brad has decided that he's going to talk to Dr. Sykes, because Brad is still trying to break Amy out of there. So he's looking at other ways to get her out of there. So everything he does is in an effort to escape the compound. So he talks to Dr. Sykes, and he winds up getting her to agree to let Amy get some fresh air outside, because, you know, she's a 10-year-old child and she can't be stuck inside day in and day out. That's not good for her. Now, Dr. Sykes is reluctant at first, but she eventually gives in when Brad assures her. He tells her, you know, y'all can afford some good security if you don't trust me, because Dr. Sykes doesn't trust him. She knows that he's going to try to break Amy out of there at some point. So he assures her, look, y'all can get some security, some guards or something. And, you know, she agrees when he reminds her of that. So him and Amy, they get to go outside, and the guards are even allowing them to build a treehouse for Amy. But of course, that has a purpose too. Well, not really a treehouse. It's a treehouse, but it's more like what it winds up being is a lookout tower is what it winds up being. So then you see Carter, you know, he's this head agent, the one that actually brought Brad and Amy in. He's summoned to see about one of his soldiers whose name is Paulson. And this guy Paulson is actually down in the basement, and he's standing in front of one of the subject cells, and this test subject's name is Winston. Now, Winston has been getting in Paulson's brain, and when you see Paulson, you see he's all frazzled, and he looks like he hadn't gotten much sleep, and if he has been sleeping, you can tell he's been having some nightmares. He just looks rough, and he's having a difficult time. But this particular test subject, this particular inmate, inmate that was on death row has been manipulating his mind too. He's been giving him nightmares by showing him why he has been in prison. And so, of course, Carter comes down there and he notices that Paulson is standing there staring at Winston's cell. And so Winston basically asks him, have you met... I'm sorry, not Winston. Paulson is staring at Winston's cell. And Paulson asks Carter, have you met Winston? And he says, no, why? And so Paulson tells him that Winston used to be a truck driver. And while he was driving the truck, he wound up picking up a girl, and he rapes her and he murders her by strapping her to the bottom of his truck. And then once he killed her, he went on a 5-year killing spree. So that's how he wound up in prison on death row. Now, Carter tried to tell Paulson not to listen to the things that Winston was showing. And he don't believe all this mess. But Paulson reminds him he can't avoid Winston. He also lets Carter know that he knows that Shauna Babcock has been talking to him and that she's been stronger and stronger than he is, and that she's all in his dreams as well. So don't try to tell me not to listen to Winston. You already know that you can't avoid them when they get in your nightmares. They get in your head, and Carter knows this. So he's still faking the funk throughout this episode as well, trying to pretend like he's not dealing with anything, but they're getting to him too. So anyway, Paulson lets him know that we're being controlled because Carter called them lab rats, and he told him, Paulson was like, Carter, what if we are the lab rats, you know? So then you see Anthony. Anthony tells Dr. Lear all about his nightmares about Dr. Fanning. And Dr. Lear tries to convince him that he's going to do better than the other test subject. He's different because he's young and strong. And he also tells Anthony that he knows that he didn't kill his girlfriend, but that he is burdened by her death. And I just mentioned the girlfriend because she's the reason why he's in prison. And I'm going to tell you about that as we go on in this conversation. So then after Dr. Lear gets through trying to console Anthony and let him know, don't worry about it. I know you having these nightmares about Dr. Fanning, and he's trying to get as much information out of Anthony as he can. He's trying to console him and let him know everything's going to be all right. And he lets him know that he knows that he's innocent. So then you see Dr. Sykes. She's talking to Carter, and she basically asks him why he changed his mind about executing Babcock. Because if you saw episode 3, Carter, the agent, was actually adamant about executing her because of the fact that she was getting into his head. But he changed his mind during the execution because he saw that she had been molested back when she was younger, and he realized why she murdered her parents. Okay. So basically he felt sorry for her. So, after Sykes asked him why he changed his mind about Babcock's execution, he lied to her and told her that his superiors at the Department of Defense told him to stand down at the last minute. He basically tells her that it's a money thing. They didn't want to throw away money like that. They done spent all this money on this test subject, and they didn't just want to throw away the project like that. So Dr. Sykes, of course, with her weak self, I don't particularly like her character. She's weak. She knows that what they're doing is wrong, but she has no integrity at all. She's sleeping with Carter, so of course she believes everything that he says. But later on in the episode, she makes a phone call to the Department of Defense to find out if Carter told her the truth, and she finds out that he in fact lied to her. Now, Anthony's nightmares are about a realtor. This is what this entire thing is about for him. He was in the process. He had been flipping houses, and he flipped this one particular house, and he was trying to sell it. And one day somebody rings the doorbell while he was there, and it's this realtor. And she came to the door, and she's like, she wanted to help him sell the house. She was going to help him put his house on the market, sell it, because not put it on the market. It was already on the market, but it had not been selling, or it had not sold. And so she was going to help him to hurry up and sell it real fast. And so while she was there, they talked for a few minutes, and he decides that he likes her. She decides that she likes him, and they decide to get together and go on a date. And her name happens to be Rachel Wilson. When you later find out that she's a little bit neurotic, she's a little crazy. She's married, and what eventually happens, and I'm just telling you in a nutshell why Anthony is why he wound up on death row. Well, she's married. Her husband found out about Anthony and the fact that she was cheating with him. He beat her, and then she wound up committing suicide. Anthony winds up getting blamed for it because her husband is a rich white man, and he told the police that Anthony was the one that beat on her, and when she killed herself, she drowned herself in the pool of a house that she bought just on the spur of the moment for her and Anthony to live in. I mean, she was really kind of cuckoo, all right? So she bought this house, And she drowned herself in the pool because of depression and being crazy, and she probably was on all kind of medications and whatnot. She liked to drink, and again, her husband beat on her. He had found out about Anthony, and so he was after Anthony. And so when she committed suicide, Anthony found her. He woke up to find her out of the bed. She was in the pool, face down in the pool. So he pulled out, he tried to resuscitate her, and he never could. But the whole time he was doing this, Dr. Fanning is in his head talking trash. He's out there at the pool with him talking because he's dreaming at this. He thinks he's dreaming, but this man is in his head. And so this is why he wound up in prison. It was because he was blamed for her murder. So one day he wakes up from a nightmare to a note from Amy. Now, as he's reading this note from her, he starts to spit out blood and he loses a tooth. Now, you can tell that he's getting really sick, and you know that it started. This whole process of changing into the vampire like Dr. Fanning and Anna Babcock is starting to happen with Anthony. As a matter of fact, when he woke up in the beginning of the episode, he could not stand the light that was coming through the windows in the room, so he had to close the blinds up. Okay, so you can see it started to affect him. The change is starting to happen in Anthony. So as he spits out blood, he loses a tooth. He starts to get really, really sick. Of course, Amy is on the other side of the door. She's worried about him. He's going into a cold sweat. He starts to faint. His body temperature starts to go down, and the injection is starting to really, really affect him badly. He was already, like I said, having issues with this being sensitive to light, which is on a warning on the door. They told him this is what may happen when you get this injection. Sensitivity to light was one of them. So after they show him getting sick, I mean, he's sweating. He's in a bad way, all right? They go over, you see Leela, who is, of course, Brad's ex-wife. She's still working with Lacey. They're still staying in this hotel because they're basically they're not necessarily on the run, but they're working to try to help fulfill the promise that Lacey had made to Brad before everybody got caught. And she's also working with this reporter by the name of Cheyenne, I believe her name is. And I think it's Cheyenne. I think the girl's name is Cheyenne. Anyway, they're all working together and they're confirming the situation with the inmates, and they're getting ready to get the story out. As a matter of fact, they've already given the story to some news outlets, and the news outlets are basically they're putting the news story on television. Y'all, I apologize for that. Somebody was calling me while I'm doing this recording. But anyway, as they're sitting there talking, the reporter is starting to get concerned about her own safety, and she's also getting concerned about Leela and Lacey's safety. But Lacey lets her know that I am here to be Leela's bodyguard. So then what you see is one day while Amy and Brad were out working on their treehouse, Amy gets permission to use the female guard's binocular. You know, this is a smart child, so she's always got some up her sleeve too. Her and Brad work well together. I like the collaboration between the two of them on this show. Well, Brad has her to look around the perimeters of the compound. Now, while she's looking, she notices Paulson's, who is Carter's soldier. You know, the one that talked to Carter, and he was basically also trying to warn Carter about y'all need to get out of here. We need to tell people about what's going on in here. Paulson is having a hard time. He realizes that what they're doing is not right, and they have created monsters, and it's a problem. And so at this point, Paulson is outside on a balcony. And as she's looking out over the perimeter, she notices him, and he has this gun in his hand. And he starts to randomly start shooting out at the complex. He shoots out the power at the compound, which affects the doctors working on Anthony. Now, Paulson at this point is a mental mess. He's ready to be taken away from this compound because, again, he wants to tell everybody what's been going on. He wants to be a whistleblower at this point. So Carter tries to talk to him. Paulson keeps saying how he tried to warn him, but nobody is listening to him. Now, thankfully, nobody gets shot at the compound except Paulson later on. Now, while Brad is calming him down, because at some point, y'all, I'm leaving out some stuff, of course, in here, but Brad eventually, as he's shooting at everybody out here, Brad and little Amy makes a run for it from the treehouse or from that lookout tower that they've built, and she's actually they run to take cover, and they wind up over with Carter, who acts like he's trying to help them. So Brad winds up, because he was a good negotiator when he was in the military, so he goes over to try to talk to Paulson, and he's calming him down, and as it turns out, Paulson has stolen a vial of blood from the lab because he wants to take it. And of course, that's his proof that what they're doing is bad. Okay. So Brad is trying to get the vial of blood from him. He's talking to him and everything. And y'all, I'm going to stop this recording right here and I'm going to do part 2.